We have a quorum, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in attendance. So that'll get us there according to our current bylaws. So this is Stan Rasmussen, Chair of the Sustainability Advisory Board. We're going to call it to order. First thing that we need to do is cover some housekeeping items. Kathy, please.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to share a few housekeeping items for tonight's Zoom meeting. The meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and channel 25. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you are not speaking. The chat function for this public meeting is disabled. All chats will go directly to me. All board members, please keep your video on. All others, keep your video off unless you are participating during the meeting. If you have any trouble, you can send me a chat. The city reserves the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. And I also wanted to remind this board that there is another board meeting tonight that starts at 7:30 here in the City Commission room. So we do ask that this meeting wrap up by 7:15. And now I'll turn it back to you, Stan.
All right, thank you. The next thing under our call to order is a reminder about the Kansas Open Meetings Act. This is a public hearing, and I want to remind people that our communications could be subject to the Open Meetings Act if we have too many people communicating, and that includes sending an email to everybody on the board. We should not be doing that. That could get us in trouble with the Open Meetings Act law in the state. So if you have an email or a message that you want to share with other board members, please send that to Kathy, and she will distribute it out to the board. And then we won't run afoul of any potential issues with the Open Meetings Act. Is there anything else we need to cover there?
Yeah, just as a reminder, I try to always put it close to the top of my emails to the board members. Please do not reply all. So yeah, just send me a direct email just to me if you have a question, or Stan and me, but please do not reply all.
Right. You can contact one person or so, but not everybody. Okay, next thing on the agenda is to approve our agenda. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at our agenda, and we're going to vote on it.
Stan?
Yes.
I don't know if, am I unmuted? No, I don't know how to do
The green light's on.
Oh, okay. I wondered, the last time we talked about putting on as a standing item the outside committees that we're attending. I just have a short report on the land code thing, and I don't know, if we have time, I can do it at the end, but I was just wondering, are we going to put it on there? Nancy may have a report with what I don't know if she's met.
No, not this time.
I think that rather than just listing all those every time,
I know, that's what I was thinking.
it would be better if we just, if you contacted me earlier and said, hey, I want to do a report, I don't know, should we just list them all every time and ask for reports?
Well, you could just put outside committees, and if somebody has something to say.
Beautiful. Okay, next time we'll do
fine.
that. We'll put outside committees, and we will find time to hear about an update on
Okay,
committee,
that's
'cause you're
great.
with the code
The land
update
code update, yeah.
committee.
Yeah.
You're sitting on that with
Deb,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, the email that I sent, that I thought I had sent earlier but didn't, came out of the food policy, Douglas County food policy retreat. I don't have to provide an update, but I'll talk about that as future business.
I think that's a good idea that we should have committee updates just as a generic topic.
Okay.
Or subcommittee.
Then there may be nothing to report, or there may be something.
I like that idea. Then we don't forget about them.
Yep, thanks.
So would somebody like to make a motion to approve our agenda for tonight?
I'll make a motion
With that change, right?
with that,
With that change for?
That addition?
the land
Yes.
update.
Yeah, that we'll hear a report from the subcommittee.
Perfect. I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving our agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good, we can hear you guys on Zoom too, so that it's all working well. Thank you for that. Next item on our agenda are the minutes, and hope you had a chance to review those. I did. I appreciated seeing that on there, or everything that was on there. I thought it was good for me. So, and we could take a motion unless somebody has some edits that they'd like to make or suggest.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Nancy moves to approve.
I'll second.
Kay's seconding. All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Nobody's opposed. Sounds like the minutes are approved. So we're going to hear a couple of staff items tonight, and then we'll move into old business and then transition into new business. So with that, Kathy is going to give us a presentation on or somebody's going to give us a presentation on our city fleet transition plan.
Sure, yeah, the first item on the staff report items is a presentation on the city fleet transition plan. And I know we have quite a few folks here on Zoom, as well as some staff here in the room. I don't know if staff wants to do an intro, or if you just want the Metropolitan Energy Center and Energetics to go ahead and kick in with their presentation.
How about I just do maybe so Mike Lawless, Deputy Director for Municipal Services and Operations. So with the move to make the city clean energy by 2035, part of that falls on the fleet to go from the fuels that we are today to a cleaner fuel, hopefully by 2035. And so in order to help us get to that goal, because there isn't the ability right now to change every vehicle that we have just instantly over to a clean energy product. And so what we wanted to do was take an approach to that where we start to look at where we're at today, where we need to be by 2035, and then how do we make that transition? Are we going to go directly from fossil fuels that we are today right into, say, a battery or hydrogen or something like that? It's probably not going to happen. And so what we wanted to do was say, how do we make that transition from the fossil fuels today to clean energy in 2035? And so what we did was we went out for a request for proposals to have a consulting company firm group help us with that transition, who has that background and the capabilities to help us do that. So what we did was we went out for the RFP, and Metropolitan Energy Center along with Energetics was the group that we selected to help us with that transition plan. And so tonight we'll kind of get what's our roadmap for how we're going to go forward and complete this plan. And I guess with that, we'll turn it over to the MEC and Energetics and let them do their presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, everybody. My name is Taylor Korn, and I'm a program coordinator at Metropolitan Energy Center, and I'll be kind of running us through the presentation today. Is it okay if I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes, you may share.
Okay. Okay. So starting off with the Green Fleet Discovery. So this is a project that is being worked on for the City of Lawrence and with help from Metropolitan Energy Center and Energetics. And so, like it was just discussed, kind of in line with the recent passing of Ordinance number 9744, the city is looking to make a push towards renewable energy sources by 2035. And so a big step in this is going to be looking at the current city fleet and helping transition that to more cleaner energy sources so we can reduce transportation emissions and reduce our overall, or the City of Lawrence's overall footprint in terms of greenhouse gases. And Like was said before, electrification can kind of be a tricky process, and this is why the City of Lawrence is working with MEC and Energetics to go about this fleet analysis. So Metropolitan Energy Center is going to be providing a comprehensive evaluation to transition the city's vehicle and equipment fleet to 100% renewable and alternative energy in line with the ordinance. And Energetics is a clean energy consultancy that collaboratively works with state and local entities to help smartly and cost-effectively integrate clean energy technologies and strategies into the real-world fleet charging and facility operations. So the purpose of this electrification is to develop a fleet replacement plan so we can move towards some cleaner sourced vehicles. And that is the end goal of this entire project, to transition the current fleet to a renewable energy source. So the project is broken down into 4 different, steps. And the first is a facility evaluation. The second is a city vehicle inventory evaluation. The third is a risk analysis. And the fourth is cost analysis and deployment plan. So with this first step, the facility evaluation, Energetics and MEC are working together to collect data based on the city's current fleet, and we are going to provide recommendations based off of this data. And this includes evaluating site visits if they're necessary in order to conduct or help with this assessment of all the current standing facilities in the City of Lawrence. And this data will help us identify deficiencies, regulatory constrictions, and prepare an estimated cost of infrastructure needs. And at the end of this evaluation, Energetics will prepare an evaluation summary of each facility in the project scope. And so moving on to the second step, this is quite similar to the first, except this is looking specifically at the city's vehicle inventory. So we are going to look at the current city fleet and prepare an inventory evaluation and identify target vehicles for EV or alternative fuel scenarios. So we're going to kind of look at what vehicles the city currently has, and based on this, we are going to make recommendations and a cost assessment to support in this fleet transition. And the third is the risk analysis. And in this step, we will be looking at all the different risks associated with each type of alternative fuel source. For example, EVs, there's always kind of some hesitancy about the range capabilities. So this is a section where we are going to identify all those potential risks based on what type of fuel source the proposed or recommended vehicles are. And we are also going to identify risks associated with this transition for public safety and core services, as well as risk in emergency events. And finally, after, we kind of seek or sort through the data, and we're able to provide different recommendations about, which vehicles will be best for this department or another department based off of all of our assessments, we will provide a recommended phased deployment plan based on the industry projected practices and budget considerations to include rate of return assessment. And in this scenario, we will also address, or in this step, we will also address any issues or concerns that arise with the deployment plan. And that is kind of a quick summary of the project. But with that being said, I am going to turn this over to Energetics, who are going to provide us a little more detail about what we can expect to come out of this assessment in terms of deliverables and some examples they have. So I will continue sharing my screen, but I will pass it over to somebody at Energetics who's going to take over.
Thank you, Taylor. This is Matt Van Slyke with Energetics, and ready to roll whenever you put those up.
Can you see these now?
We're still seeing the first PowerPoint.
Oh, sorry, it might be stuck on here.
You might want to stop sharing on this one and then start sharing on the new one.
Gotcha.
Sorry, just while you guys are transitioning, can somebody define for me the distinction between these two groups? Energetics and the Metropolitan Energy Center?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Sykes. That's That's part of my plan. I'll make sure to do that.
Okay,
for you.
cool. Thank you.
Okay.
So while we're waiting on these slides, just really quickly, so that you know, I'm working remotely right now. I think I have a good connection and audio, but I do see your videos. If my audio gets difficult to hear, somebody please just raise their hand or give a arrow up or something like that, so I don't, so I know to be a little bit clearer. I'd appreciate that. So Energetics is a clean energy consultancy. We're based in Columbia, Maryland, just outside of Baltimore. We have offices in upstate New York. We have an office in San Diego, California. We have an office in Washington, D.C. that's co-located with Department of Energy, who we work with regularly on a variety of issues and project types. We also have staff in remote offices across the country, and that leaves us very capable and comfortable working in a remote virtual environment like we're doing in this project, where we're partnered with MEC to deliver our piece of it, which is focused on the electrification of the city fleet vehicles. So to clarify our roles just a bit, if that helps, our expertise and the reason why we like partnering with MEC on this project and we feel we bring value to the project is because we have decades of experience now in all types of alternative fueled transportation. That conversation, as most of you probably already know, has turned in recent years and very quickly is turning even more distinctly towards electric vehicles. This project, as requested in the RFP, doesn't specifically state that electric vehicles are the only option. So we're working with our contacts at the city and with MEC to refine that scope to give you the best product possible. But today, MEC asked us to join your meeting today and give you a little bit of an example and a little bit of a taste of the types of analyses that we often do in these kinds of projects. I've pasted a link in the chat for anyone who's interested in learning up a little bit more about energetics and the transportation related work that we do. Feel free to click that link and visit our site and our page specifically that focuses on our transportation related work. Feel free to follow up afterwards. We're happy to answer any questions about what it is that energetics does generally. But I'll give you some examples here on some slides of the types of analysis that you might see coming out of this type of project. So if you could go to the next slide for me, Taylor, appreciate it.
Excuse me, is the chat disabled?
It is.
I'm sorry, I sent, yes, forgive me. The message I believe I sent specifically just to Kathy, it looked like. So if that didn't come through, let me know. But
Yeah.
So you can't share it?
I mean, I can share that within the minutes of this meeting.
sure.
I can share it with the board members in an email. But yeah, it is, the chat function is disabled.
It's that link is not critical to any of our presentation today. It's just if you want to share it in the minutes so that other guests of the meeting can look at that at their leisure. So here, if you could just go back one slide, please. Yep. So this is a disclaimer here that's a little bit overbearing, forgive me, but the point here is that I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the examples that we're showing are representative of this type of work. But please understand that we approach each of these projects individually and provide a unique analysis and therefore outputs and deliverables that are specifically tailored to the fleet and its unique characteristics. So with that said, if you could just go to the next slide, I'll show you a few examples of what we do typically. So a lot of times, fleets manage their vehicles in a way that tends to be somewhat disjointed for a variety of very good reasons. I mean, there's often various departments around the city that manage their own fleet or their own vehicles as kind of a sub set of the overall city fleet. That makes a lot of sense for a lot of good reasons. But in order to do this type of analysis, it's often desirable to consolidate the vehicle list from, if there are various departments, for example, into a more comprehensive list with a uniform format so that it can be analyzed more easily. So these shots on the screen are just a couple of examples of what we often see. You might see department number one has their vehicles tracked with these fields. The content of these slides is not critical, but what you can see here is that departments 1, 2, and 3 are managing their list of vehicles in a way that suits their needs. And they're keeping track of certain fields, often in a simple spreadsheet without a very robust analysis attached to it. And that serves their purposes. But again, in this type of work, it's often a good idea early on to consolidate those lists, refine those lists, and fill in any gaps that might exist among the various sub fleets that are managing vehicles. So that's part of what we started doing with the City of Lawrence fleet vehicle list. With MEC's help and its help from city staff, we've brought all the vehicles kind of together into one uniform list, and we've started to identify some of the gaps in the data and fill those in so that we have a really nice, clean list of all the vehicles that are being maintained and managed citywide. And that's a product that we often find is useful even after the life of the project as a way to kind of track vehicle maintenance, fuel consumption, vehicle replacements, procurement, and answer procurement questions in a more comprehensive way. So we're working on that now. That's often a very early step, and that is underway. Next slide, please. So this is an example of what you might see after we've combined those lists. You can see that the third field from the left identifies the department where the vehicle is housed and who is managing it. But then you can see that the fields going across are all uniform now. And that allows, like I was saying, for a more robust analysis and an easier way to track vehicles over time. Next. So the electric vehicle market is changing very quickly, as we all know. So what we'll do is we'll take that comprehensive fleet inventory that we develop, and we'll start to match that up with potential vehicles that could be used as replacements as the fleet transitions. Now, keep in mind that this is not intended to be a comprehensive list of all of the electric vehicles that are out there to choose from, because frankly, a lot of them are not necessarily the best choices for fleets. Sometimes, you're not going to often see a municipal fleet running around in a, $250,000 electric SUV or something like that. Not if the optics are a concern, of course. So we do provide a market availability analysis, but it's again tailored to the specific fleet and its needs and the vehicles that are in the fleet currently and how they might match up with potential electrified or other alternatively fueled options. Next. So charging infrastructure is an essential element, just like your internal combustion engine fleet requires gas stations or a fueling station on city property. The electric vehicles require charging infrastructure, which can be thought of as your fueling station, in similar ways to the internal combustion engine vehicles that are in the fleet now. So a charging infrastructure needs assessment is always a part of these projects. And we use the information that we've gathered related to where vehicles are parked, how many employees are at different locations, all sorts of different variables that will affect the need for the right amount of charging infrastructure to be installed and planned for as the station transitions. So that's always a part of these analyses. And you can see a couple of examples of how we might show that. The map shows, in this case, one fleet's locations where they have vehicles parked, some overhead aerial views of their parking facilities and where charging may be installed. And then there's a a table there that shows an example of the type of information that we can provide related to the specific site requirements and the charging needs that might be required at different locations. Next. So the transition plan is kind of where this all comes together. And that will look different every time, because every fleet has different needs and different plans, and every municipality has different goals related to greenhouse gas emissions reductions, fuel and maintenance cost savings, etc. So these are just a couple of examples of what we sometimes show as part of a detailed transition plan. And these visuals and these tables will accompany a narrative, a very clear narrative as well, of course. But these are examples of what we might show. There's there's 3 tables on the right that show an example of an annual vehicle replacement by department and by vehicle specifically. And then the table on the left shows an example of kind of an aggregated replacement matrix that shows the number of vehicles being replaced over time. And in this case, they're divided by the vehicle type. Next. That vehicle transition plan, the specific vehicle by vehicle plan, all feeds into our analysis of the overall shift towards renewable energy. So accompanying those tables and the data analysis and the narrative will produce very clear, easy to understand visuals that can be shared with the public, and among city decision makers and fleet managers, so that you can really see visually how the fleet may transition over time. And we take extra steps to make sure that the transition plan is not just a suggestion where that implies that you should buy 50 vehicles in year 1 and then not buy another electric vehicle for another 3-4 years. In other words, we take our raw analysis, which often shows based on the criteria and the specifications of the vehicles in the fleet now, the raw recommendations that come out of our analysis tools might suggest that a lot of vehicles get replaced early on, because in some cases, the fleet has a lot of really old vehicles or has a lot of very high fuel consumption vehicles, low MPG vehicles. But we realize that that's not realistic, and that the replacement of vehicles and the procurement of vehicles needs to be spread over time in order to do so in a cost-effective way. So our transition plan starts with kind of a raw analysis that gives us a suggestion, and then we use our expertise and further communication with the city to make sure that ultimately the plan to transition vehicles makes sense and is spread out over time to both achieve the greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals, the fuel cost savings and maintenance goals, but also to do so in a cost-effective way. Next. This is a little bit more information and some examples of visuals that accompany further narrative that is related to greenhouse gas emissions reductions, fuel cost reductions over time. So we can use the data that we have from the fleet and the data and specifications we have on recommended vehicles that you may be transitioning to or considering as the transition vehicles. And we can estimate pretty confidently what the fuel cost savings will be year by year, what the greenhouse gas emissions reductions will be year over year, and provide some outputs that will guide the city's decision making over time. And none of this happens in a vacuum. This is a result of our analysis, further communication with the city as we go along through the project to make sure that ultimately what we provide you is something that is useful and fits into the overall goals that the city has as the fleet transitions away from fossil fuel powered vehicles towards alternative fuels at some point in the future. Slide, don't recall.
Matt, I think we lost you.
Okay, do you hear me again?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. It was just switching over. I hope that that gives you a clear example of the types of data analysis and reporting that we might give. I'm happy to answer questions about any of that. And certainly this isn't the last opportunity we have to discuss this with the city.
Any of the SAB members have questions? Nancy Muma?
So I have a couple of questions. One, I looked at the vehicle types that you listed, and there weren't things like buses or garbage trucks or any type of larger vehicles. They were just smaller cars and pickup truck types. Are those larger vehicles included in your fleet analysis or not?
They are. And again, those are just examples that we have, and not necessarily meant to be representative of exactly what we have here. But there are a number of medium and heavy duty vehicles in the city's fleet now. Without getting ahead of the analysis too much, I can say that our experience has been that currently that medium and heavy duty market is emerging. Not necessarily mature, certainly not as far as the light duty vehicle market is, but there are some options out there, and that'll be part of the analysis, part of the considerations and discussion as we go forward. Sure.
Okay, so do you also take into consideration grants and funding that's available through the IRA and the IAGJ, whatever it is?
Lots of acronyms, and we try to stay ahead of them the best we can. And yes, that's certainly part of the discussion as we go forward.
Because there are some heavy vehicle opportunities for cities and municipalities to take advantage of in those areas.
Yes.
Other questions, Kay?
Yes, Kay Johnson, SAB Board Director. So I understand a lot of other communities are in the same process. Some have already gone to auxiliary power units for idling and idle reduction. Is that being considered for maybe the midsize and the heavy duty vehicles? Because that will also save fuel and reduce emissions.
Yes, that's certainly part of the conversation. And it's my understanding that there are a few vehicles in the city's fleet right now that have idle reduction technology installed, and that's certainly a viable option going forward. There's also a quickly developing market for electrified auxiliary equipment, for bucket trucks and those types of things, and that's certainly something else to look at. Not necessarily just focusing our only view on a totally electrified vehicle.
And
it's
then
important
what
to be
year? Excuse me. Then what year were you asked to have this span viewed? I was looking at our energy resolution, and it looked like to me that it was like 2032, but I don't know if that was just something that you used as an example.
That was something just used as an example in the slides. And often what we'll do is, we'll kind of project out a certain number of years and give you some idea of what it would look like if the fleet transitions at a certain pace, and a lot of times what ends up being helpful, and not that it's necessarily the case here, but just as an example, sometimes it's helpful to see kind of a conservative approach, an aggressive approach, and something in between. Sometimes we want to see what it would look like if the fleet transitioned by a certain date, a certain year, again, being maybe 5 years out, 10 years out, and 15 years out, or something like that might make sense. That's all possible. And as we're just kind of getting started here, that's, all of those permutations and combinations are are open for discussion and on the table for sure.
Any other questions from members of the board? I'm not seeing any. I'll ask a quick question, hopefully quick.
Sure.
It might be for our city folks to answer. I don't know. How are we defining the fleet that is being examined for Lawrence? Does it include fire and medical vehicles, police vehicles, maintenance equipment, construction equipment that's wheeled, construction equipment that's tracked? I mean, how are we defining fleet for this, for their evaluation?
Good evening, Robert Aaron, fleet manager for the city. That includes everything that's in our fleet scope. It moves from parks and rec equipment, lawnmowers to all the way through fire apparatus. Yellow iron, what we call yellow iron typically would be your construction equipment, will be evaluated as well. So it's a full broad scope. It includes the infrastructure deficiencies we have, obviously, regulatory and compliance issues we have with some of the locations of our fleet. So it's kind of a broad scope that we're reeling in. So it's projected to take a year long. We're about a quarter into it right now. So it does include all those types of vehicles.
Okay, that's impressive. Thank you.
I guess
Any other-
I have one.
Okay, Ben?
Just thinking about how you identify the low-hanging fruit. So there's some portions of it that could be, we've got something that's really old and it's using a lot of gas. Some of those are no-brainers, right? But they might also be really expensive to replace, right? There might be things that we have that are relatively new in the fleet that might even be hybrids still and might still be worth quite a lot in terms of being able to resell them. I guess I'm just wondering, maybe this is to Matt, like when you've worked with other cities, like how do they prioritize the different aspects of turning those in or turning this over? Like the ones that reduce CO2 by the most, the quickest, right, is one simple way if that's what your goal is. But you might also have vehicles that are still worth a lot, or maybe you're eligible for grant incentives and things like that that could really be the ones that are first to prioritize.
Yeah, that's a good point, and thanks for asking. There are certainly different considerations, right? And it boils down to what is the ultimate goal? Are we looking for the absolute quickest transition away from fossil fuels, the absolute quickest return on investment in terms of fuel cost savings, or are we looking to replace vehicles that are most readily available at low cost that can kind of phase into the fleet, giving users of the fleet vehicles some exposure to electric vehicles to kind of deal with change management a little bit and kind of getting staff used to electric vehicles. So just like everything else that relates to the project, all of that is on the table right now, and we can provide, just like I was saying, if it's desirable, we can kind of provide options on transitioning the fleet over certain periods of time, or with a certain amount of aggressiveness. We can also provide some scenarios that relate to replacing vehicles with different goals in mind, being either a greenhouse gas emissions reduction, cost savings, etc. So to answer your question, I think at this point, relatively early on in the project, those options are available to us, and we're happy to provide different scenarios based on different parameters and different goals.
Nancy, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if the city has discussed any of their strategic goals and what they're prioritizing to you.
Again, Robert Aaron, fleet manager. So part of the conversation with them is kind of a holistic conversation. We know we have some technology challenges for a lot of our larger apparatus that there just isn't really good solutions right now. But there are opportunities in other markets for some of our large apparatus. So the prioritization of that is a ongoing conversation. Obviously, we need to be fiscally responsible. It'd be nice to replace the entire fleet in one swoop. So it's a kind of a combined effort of, how do we get there in a responsible manner, but still a manner that makes sense for the city and operations, along with the risks that are included with that. So I don't know if I answered the question correctly for you, but it's kind of an ongoing dialogue and conversation. So obviously the city has a strategic plan, and the environmental conversation is part of that, and that's considered with us every day. So
Thank you.
Okay, follow up.
So, Kay Johnson, SAB member. So what is your timeline? What's the scope of this contract, or the two contracts?
The entire process is expected to take a year. So, we started this late 22, probably really got into the data transfers in November. So we don't really expect to report. And again, some of that's on working together and timelines, but we hope to have something by the end of the year. If it drags on due to the market and changing environments, I can't speak for that, but it's a fairly encompassing project. There's a lot of moving variables in it. Like I said, part of it's regulatory and compliance. We asked them to look at our zoning. For instance, a quarter of our fleet's located at the 11th and Haskell location. Charging is not an option there. It's in a floodway. So, we have a lot of infrastructure challenges we have to get through depending on what they recommend and what we see as feasible. So it's a long going process.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been Sykes, board member. I just want to pick up on that. I mean, particularly for the charging infrastructure, wherever you put it, it's kind of there. I mean, these things, at least currently, aren't mobile and stuff like that. And there's a lot of transitioning going on right now about where our fleets are going to be, the multimodal center, the movement of all these. I mean, can you just offer perspective on, in a year that looks different than 10 years down the road? Right?
Oh, absolutely. Some of the infrastructure challenges we have is a lot of our facilities, some of them are old and they really weren't designed for that additional capacity. So we have to get through what that scope looks like, what upgrades we need, what that's going to cost. And again, where fleets are located, So obviously moving charging to a new police facility isn't as challenging as possibly some of our other older facilities that may potentially be upgraded someday. So, okay.
All right. Thank you to Energetics and I want to get it right. Metropolitan
Energy Center.
Energy Center. Thank you. My slides were going by too fast. Metropolitan Energy Center for being here tonight and giving us that briefing. Thank you all for being here as well.
This is one of two of the discovery meetings, open to the public. So I wondered if you would be okay with opening it up for any public questions.
We're limited on time, but I'm happy to do that. So I wonder if anybody who has joined us. We have one member from the public here in person, Michael, and I don't know if there's anybody else who might have a question. Feel free to come up, Michael. And it looks like Don Hawkins has raised their hand.
Hi, Michael Allman with Sustainability Action Network. A question for Mr. Van Slyke about the charging stations. Is your analysis and the recommendations going to be as refined as which types of vehicles, particularly large ones versus small ones, ones that are in continuous use as opposed to those occasional use, and the level of charging stations you're going to recommend, the 240 volt or 480 volt? Are you going to break it down in that much of a detail?
Yes, absolutely. And it's important to do so because we need to provide an assessment of the infrastructure needs in a way that makes financial sense for the city, because the costs of different level charging, as I'm sure you know, can vary widely. And what we do as an early step in that charging infrastructure assessment and analysis is look very closely at the duty cycle of vehicles across the fleet. For example, there are often a significant number of especially light duty vehicles that get relatively little use in terms of daily and weekly mileage. And they spend quite a bit of their time parked overnight outside of working hours. That's unique in a municipal fleet situation, oftentimes. So in those cases, the charging infrastructure needs might be different than when looking at other vehicles, such as police patrol vehicles, for example, that may be in operation nearly 24 hours a day. They have a very different use profile than a vehicle that's operated by an administrative department that is not on, constant use or on call all the time.
Great, thank you. And one other simple question. Are you going to be recommending any solar electricity at the charging stations in any case?
We haven't gotten into that level of detail at this point. We're still pretty early on in the project, but we're open to evaluating and analyzing any possibility that makes sense for the city, for sure.
Thank you, Michael. Dawn Hawkins has her hand raised. Dawn? You are still muted.
Hi, thank you. And thanks to Kathy for mentioning that the public, this is actually, I see online that this presentation was advertised as kind of a public input, and that public is to be given 3 minutes to speak. And I'm not going to take up your time except to say that I'm really excited about this presentation. I don't know, but I gathered that Metropolitan, what is it?
Energy Center.
Thank you. Won the bid that was apparently put out back in May. So you guys are the official company doing this work. I didn't even know about it. I missed that, but I'm on a lot of city email lists to get notification of meetings and such. I might have missed it, but I didn't know about this presentation. I just happen to come to these meetings all the time. So I do think it's a really good idea to keep the public engaged, because, we know we can provide a lot to the conversation, historical issues in certain areas and what the needs are. So I would encourage either the contractor or the city, or in combination, to really provide a lot of information about this on the website that I kind of discovered while watching the meeting that the city is providing now. So that people can know about meetings. I encourage you to have more meetings, specific, not necessarily taking up the SAB's time, but a separate meeting, because the SAB is so overwhelmed with a lot going on. But this is very exciting to see that the city is moving forward on really addressing our climate and energy goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. I want to ask a question based on Dawn's comments. Will the report that these two organizations provide, Metropolitan Energy and Energetics, will that report and those recommendations be available online? We're getting lots of head nods from the city staff here, so it sounds like those will be available. That's good to hear. Thank you for raising that point, Dawn. All right, with that, I think we're going to move on to our next agenda item. Kathy, I see that it's concerns Senate Bill 47. Can we hold off on that until we address that here in a few more minutes?
Yeah, and I did have a couple other staff updates. I can take like 2 minutes or less.
Okay, please share.
All right. So within our sustainability staff report and updates, I did want to mention again that we are working on the sustainable capital projects policy. That is the policy we brought to the Sustainability Advisory Board back in November. It's the policy that will be in front of the Commission on March 21st. And that one is that calls out LEED Gold certification for new facilities, LEED Gold certification for major renovations of city facilities, and then Envision as the sustainability rating system for infrastructure projects. So I wanted to mention that that is in the works, as well as the work on the single-use plastic bags ordinance. We have our city attorney's office that's currently working on edits to that ordinance. And we have also some work with the communications office as well. Those two items will be, like I said, in commission on March 21st. The idea is I had asked in January for a smaller group to be able to really kind of sit down and discuss and then maybe draft something if the board would like to add any type of communication that they would submit to the city commission for that meeting on the 21st. So one of the subcommittees of the Sustainability Advisory Board is meeting next week. I know we're still working on time, but that subcommittee will work on both of those items and then potentially bring something back in the March meeting, which is March 8th for the Sustainability Advisory Board, if there's any action to take so that something could be submitted to commission. Maybe there will be no correspondence. It's up to the Sustainability Advisory Board whether they want correspondence or what part of feedback you want to give to the commission regarding those two items that staff will present on March 21st. So the subcommittee will take that on next week. Nancy?
So I have a question. Will the ordinance drafted by the city staff be available to the subcommittee next week for review?
Yes, both the policy, sustainable capital projects policy, and the, fingers crossed, the ordinance for the single-use plastic bags will be available to that subcommittee so that we can have those discussions. And like I mentioned, Melinda will attend as part of the sustainable policies part. We won't have a city attorney attend that.
Okay.
For the other.
Because as Commissioner Sellers, I believe, suggested, she wanted this to be a collaborative project. So I wanted to make sure that we followed up on her recommendation and were able to do some collaborative interaction with the ordinance prior to it going back to the commission.
Yeah, 100%. And, in January, I asked for that SAB support on those two items. I know that the board is looking at reorganizing or renaming the subcommittees, but when I reached out to Stan, he mentioned we can still activate the current subcommittees in the meantime to be the kind of that working group for those two items. So thank you for adding those two items in your subcommittee meeting that's coming up.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So when you get the draft ordinance, will you share that with everybody on the SAB?
Yeah, I guess we're going to be working with the subcommittee and there might be some additional edits and such. So what I would present, the ordinance would be in that March 8th SAB meeting.
Yeah, but the reason I would want it earlier is some of us might want to provide some input to the subcommittee that is working on that. And if we have to wait until our March 8th meeting to see it for the first time, we don't have that opportunity to provide any type of input. Whether that, we would funnel that through you, that you could present to the subcommittee when they were working on it. But if we don't get to see that until March 8th, so my question is, will you I guess my request is, would you please provide that to all of us when it is available to the subcommittee as well?
Yeah, and I can certainly ask that question again. The city attorney's office is working on the ordinance. When Nancy asked me about it, I was very hopeful that it would be available by their meeting on, that meeting is on Wednesday of next week. So I will ask about, is this something that can be shared, with the full board at that time? Again, we're trying to make sure there's not a conversation going on that's not public. So I'll discuss the city attorney's office and see if that can be something that's available to you.
And that would be both of the ordinances?
The sustainable capital projects policy is not an ordinance. It's a city policy.
But will that be available?
I will ask on both of those in the process.
So it'll be available to the subcommittee that.
I mean, in advance, yeah. So
Right. But the question is, could it be available to the entire SAB because of public?
Yeah.
Kansas Open Meetings Act.
Yeah, I will ask those questions.
Thank
I
you.
do know I did get guidance on the written testimony. If that was something I could just send out to the full board and, received is just post it on the next Sustainability Advisory Board agenda.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I understand if the city attorney's office said, no, this is a draft and we're not comfortable with it being posted publicly available, that may limit your ability to share it with everybody. I understand you may run into that, but
I'll check.
if it's possible to share it with all of us, I would request that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll check on that. And then, of course, that written testimony was attached. The only other update really quick is there was a lot of questions about weatherization, as one of the subcommittees was leading that. It looks like for my research in the August 2021 agenda is when the weatherization program subcommittee had submitted to the Sustainability Advisory Board a weatherization grant program recommendations. It was a final draft document. I did ask the planning department, what happened since that was submitted. The planning director did mention that that subcommittee was working with Danny Walters and Brad Carr with the Housing Initiative, as they were in between a project specialist at that time. And they are working on trying to free up some staff time, but they are pretty swamped right now. He did mention the weatherization is a federal program, and there are some strict requirements and standards that must be met for funding eligibility. And he had just quickly looked at the document that was provided by SAB in 2021 and said that some of the suggestions may not meet or conflict with those requirements. But he does have a project specialist, Caitlin Doler, that he shared the document with and is looking at it. So my only question to the Sustainability Advisory Board is if somebody, again, a lot of the folks that were in the subcommittee are no longer on the Sustainability Advisory Board. So is there somebody that wants to kind of follow up and work on this project?
I think I'm the only person that worked on it that's still on here. So I'm happy to, if they want to talk to somebody about it, I'm happy to provide. So
Okay.
Yeah. Can I ask one just back on is it your impression that we will have an opportunity to engage directly with the city attorney's office on the ordinance before city commission season, like an actual back and forth with them, not the telephone game? No offense to you, but like us making recommendations, you handing them off to city attorney's office, them thinking about them coming back to you. Is there a direct collaboration that we might be able to have before the March 21st meeting when city commission? Before that?
I can certainly ask that question.
Okay. I know they're entirely swamped too, but that would be fantastic. Just because we may say something and then they'll go, well, that won't work because of X, Y, and Z. And if that takes 2 weeks, then that's not a very effective way for us to collaboratively, finish that ordinance.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, sorry, that's just I will be happy to serve on the
Weatherization
to connect
okay.
on that. Yeah.
I got you.
Thanks.
For weatherization.
Along the same lines, this is Kay Johnson. It seems like a lot of times we send stuff over the fence to the city commission. We still don't have the solar ready discussion. Also, the weatherizations one, it was 2021, the noxious weeds. I mean, there are several things on the list that I think we work really hard to make sure that the things get done, but we need to see some, I'm very hopeful about the plastic bag thing. State of Kansas may change it, but, those are the things that I'm concerned with.
Any of the items that you worked on, previously that you feel, you have a question as to where it is in the process, please bring that up to me. Weatherization is not something that I, knew was still pending. If you look at the minutes, it looks like it was submitted. It was a kind of a done deal. So when you brought it up, I was able to do the research and go find the minutes and find the documents and then talk to the appropriate department. I'm happy to do that with the other.
Oh, I'm not criticizing you or anybody in particular. It's just if
I'm saying,
yeah, right. And so the solar ready one is another one.
I know to look them up. I'm happy to really dig into any of these and see where we're at. And if there's still some more action, like this one sounds like there's still some more action to go through, then I'm happy to kind of arrange that or organize that collaboration. Yeah.
Maybe you can send her an email on that.
Solar ready.
Solar ready. And I didn't write it, so I don't have the most recent copy.
Was that 2021 as well?
It was before that. It had to be 2020.
Wasn't there?
It wasn't when
You weren't even.
I wasn't on the board yet.
Institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
I can dig through. That's what I did with weatherization, is just go back each minutes till I found it.
All right. We have about 40 minutes to get through a lot of other things on our agenda. I'd like us to move along. If we could, the next item is old business, and it requires us to take action, and that is to amend our bylaws to allow a 5-person quorum as opposed to a 6-person quorum. We currently have 10 members, and by law, we only need to have at least 50% of the people attending to have a quorum to meet. So if we could have a motion to support that, or if there's discussion.
I noticed that it says present in person. Does that include Zoom presence?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Present in person, participating in the meeting.
Okay.
This has been six. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, Maddie Bell SAB member. I was just going to say when Kay and Ben and I worked on the update to the bylaws, the 6-person quorum was in anticipation of an 11-person board. So, and I know that like the 11-person board thing has other elements to it through the city. So I don't know if changing the quorum is necessary now, unless I'm forgetting that we've set in motion the process of changing the number of board members.
And Maddie, this Kay, I think the issue was there are so many other changes going on to the committees, like the committee for the committees, that we decided we could go ahead and change the quorum to lower it, because we really do just have 10 right now. And then it would be changed if we get back to updating the bylaws, including our purpose and all the other things. So this was something that we could actually take action on without a commission approval.
This is increasing it. This is changing 5 to 6.
No,
No.
it's going from 6 to 5.
Well, that's not the way it's stated here. It says 5 to 6.
Oh, it's written wrong.
Yeah, it's 6 to 5.
Oops.
It's incorrectly stated on.
Maddie Bell SAB member. I was going off of what the writing said, so I scratch what I said. I thought we were saying 5 to 6, and I was like, I don't really think we need to. So, yeah, never mind.
if I can just mention some of the previous conversations, the current Sustainability Advisory Board bylaws say 5 is meeting quorum. And the idea or the conversation that came about to changing that to 6, in addition to, I know that the subcommittee was hoping to expand the number of members, is usually a quorum is the majority of the board. So if you have 10 members, 6 would be the majority of the board. And we did, it seemed like last year there were some subcommittees where a member was not able to attend because you had the 5. The 5th person would make it a quorum.
That's why we were raising. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we're going up.
Climate Action Plan Subcommittee.
We couldn't have more people on the committee. That's right.
Wanted to attend a meeting, but was not.
Oh, this was to
Open.
okay. Now you've refreshed my memory.
Yeah.
We want to go from 5 to 6 so that we can have
More
one extra
people on
person
the,
on a subcommittee
right,
without establishing that we have a quorum.
right.
That is correct.
Thank you. I had it all backwards. So it is stated correct.
It's right.
Okay. So I'll make a motion.
Clear as mud.
Maddie Bell, SAB member, I will second the motion.
So Nancy moved, Maddie seconded. All those in favor of changing our bylaws to require 6 people to constitute a quorum, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. All right, that passes. Thank you. I did put a placeholder in here on the agenda for Ordinance 9744. That's it was the key priority that we identified at our strategic planning meeting. It's got the renewable energy goals for the city on it. You heard briefly about it tonight, but I wanted to keep it on here in case we wanted to talk about it some more. Is there more discussion that's needed about this at this time? And I think it'll just be a standing item on our agenda to check in.
Well, as long as we're going to discuss Earth Day, which I think is an important piece of.
That's on item 6 on the
yes,
agenda.
But that's what I'm saying. I think that that's an important piece of Ordinance 9744 is to inform the public.
Okay.
So
We'll get there. Next item on the agenda is update on the boards and commissions structure.
we did have somebody.
We have a question.
Public.
Oh,
On Ordinance 9744, I'm just curious. I haven't followed all the discussions so far to know how much of the focus is on the city operations itself achieving 100% renewable energy versus the wider community achieving 100%. That's going to be more difficult to do, but I don't know how your discussions are handling that.
Well, I'll just address that. I think, communications like the Earth Day issue is something really important to engage the public, to pull in the necessary piece outside of the city electrification and so forth. So in order to, that heavy lift of the public, I think is going to have to be done through things like engaging the public with Earth Day and those sorts of events.
All right. Thank you.
If
hey, did you want to comment?
I do, because I think there, like with the fleet plan, I think there ought to be a plan for each one of these items.
Mhm.
I think that should be in collaboration with the Sustainability Advisory Board, but I think the city should do that.
Of each of the renewable energy. goals.
Right.
Yeah.
And on the second page, renewable energy goals.
Makes a lot of sense. Any other comment on this? I think it's important for us to check in on 9744 each month. And so we're going to leave it on there as the agenda, as an agenda item. On the subcommittee structure, I told Kathy that my goal is before my term ends to have, good descriptions that we can all kind of agree upon on the subcommittees and make sure we know who's on them and maybe get them listed so that everybody can see what the subcommittees are that we have, what they're kind of tasked to do, and who's on there. So we'll continue working on that. And with that, I know that we have somebody on one of the subcommittees who would like to update us on their work with the city code, development code update.
Right. And I'm trying to remember the exact name, the Land Management Code Update Committee or Steering Committee is what I represent the Sustainability Advisory Board on. Deb Ford is also on that. And on January 26th, we had a meeting, a steering committee meeting that was presented. We were presented with a draft, and I don't have it with me, but it was like 63 pages of items that they're considering consolidating some zoning areas, a lot of different things that they, the company that has been hired to do this had looked at trying to simplify the code. And obviously there are many variances right now in lots of different areas of the code. And so they were trying to they did present a presentation that included some of the consolidation of the different various codes. There was some discussion on open spaces and the differences on the different types of the code in the zones, and based on whether it was urban or more industrial or commercial, residential. And I think that it was very well received to reduce the number of different zones, but there is going to be public comment on that. And there is a website, and I will provide it to Kathy, for the public and the Sustainability Advisory Board to look at. The comments, you can actually go through. There's a way to look at the plan to adjust the plan, and to add comments online. So there's a couple of different ways you could call, or you could write a letter, or you could actually put input into what had been presented. The code itself hasn't been provided as a draft, just the plan to adjust the code. So it's complicated, it's long, but it will be actually a larger version of the code because they're going to put pictures in there. And I really like the idea of pictures because then people can understand the different dimensions and things that are being discussed that should help clarify the code. So anyway, the biggest takeaway is that there is a draft out that the public and the Sustainability Advisory Board members can comment on. And I will send the link and a PDF to Kathy so that she can distribute it.
Perfect. Thank you, Kay.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other updates from subcommittees at this time? No.
This is Ben Sykes, SAB board member. I attended the retreat for the Douglas County Food Policy Council Committee, and I'm the SAB rep for that. And there was great discussion among how there can be feedback between the two. And a particular issue that they're interested in is composting, and the rules around composting, because it's related to waste, are actually set by the city. So the county actually doesn't have a huge say in some of those things. So I think that they're interested in collaborating with SAB and with the city more generally, a county-city collaboration to look at composting. And I would ask that on future agenda items, we invite Connie Fitzpatrick, who's the Douglas County Food Policy Coordinator. Is that right, Kathy?
The staff liaison. Mm-hmm.
Staff liaison, and she will come and present to us on their perspectives on composting and how we might take a role in revisions to that ordinance, those ordinances.
We will consider that for next month. I want to make sure that we allow enough time to adequately discuss the two items that are going to be going before the city commission. So if we can't schedule her next month, we'll move it to April.
Sounds great. Thank you.
but I appreciate that. All right. Next item on the new business. I think that covers us for old business. New business. I wanted to give you a brief update on the Boards and Commissions Structure Committee meeting. We had our first committee meeting last month. I want you all to know that what we did there, the majority of the meeting, was we looked at the 23 boards, committees, commissions, whatever you want to, whatever their title happens to be, that the city controls, that could be consolidated, eliminated, moved, reorganized. We looked at all of those, and we then looked at the city's strategic plan, the 5 outcomes: unmistakable identity, strong, welcoming neighborhoods, safe and secure, prosperity and economic security, and connected city. And we placed each one of those boards under where do they fit? Where do they help the city achieve the outcomes that they want to achieve in the strategic plan? So that information is now available. It's part of the packet for our meeting, which is tomorrow night. And so I would encourage you to take a look at that if you want to see. I will say that the Sustainability Advisory Board was not placed under one of those outcomes because everybody recognized that we're kind of ubiquitous. We are in all of those outcomes. We touch all of those. And we were one of the few boards or committees that seems to have a role in all of those outcomes that are the key 5 outcomes to the strategic plan. What that means, I don't know yet, but it suggests to me that there was recognition that we have a significant role in the city's strategic plan. So I wanted to report that. The other thing I wanted to let you all know is everybody got an email asking them to complete a survey about boards and commissions, asking, you know, what do you know about them? How did you get on your board? All sorts of questions. You know, like it's a survey. A lot of people did not fill it out, but we are going to go through all of those tomorrow night that we did receive replies on. And so those will help guide our activity. So those are going to be the 2 main things that we discuss tomorrow on the agenda is how we ranked those, all of the committees and boards in the city with the outcomes in the strategic plan. And then we're going to review the results of the questionnaires. And the questionnaires not only went to board members, but also went to staff liaisons. So we've got feedback from the staff and feedback from board members. And all of those results are now part of the agenda packet too. So you can go look and see what everybody said in reply to the questionnaire and survey. So I would encourage you to take a look at that if you're curious about what's going on. Other than that, it's still very new. You know, it's just our second meeting. So, but they're good long meetings.
Thanks for your representation. Thanks for your service.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next item, did anybody have any further questions on that? I don't know. I kind of gave you a brain dump on everything I know at this point. I wanted to quickly touch on next item is 2 bills that are before the Kansas legislature that the SAB might have particular interest on. One of them was Senate Bill 47. That's the bill that would restrict city and counties from prohibiting the use of auxiliary containers and consumer merchandise. And I wanted to make sure everybody understood that this is not the same bill that was out there last year prohibiting cities from regulating bans. It's been combined with the nicknamed Petco bill. The consumer products or the consumer merchandise portion of it is a result of City of Wichita proposal to prohibit pet stores from selling puppies and kittens, dogs and cats. And so there's pushback against that. So the two topics have been combined into one bill that would restrict the use, restrict cities and counties from restricting use of auxiliary containers. And it's a very broad definition for auxiliary container. It includes plastic bags. And then it would also prohibit cities and counties from restricting consumer merchandise sales of legal merchandise.
Like puppies.
Like puppies. It's the Petco portion of it, but it's broad. It's all legal merchandise. I would say that the proponents of the bill included the Kansas Chamber, who referred to a Greenpeace report entitled "Plastic Recycling is a Dead-End Street." It sounds really like a bad article to come out of Greenpeace, but it's really talking about the challenges. I don't know if you've gone and looked at that article, but it talks about the challenges of recycling plastic in the United States, how difficult it is. There was a representative from the American Recyclable Plastic Bag Alliance there, the Fuel True Independent Energy and Convenience Store representative, speaking on behalf of convenience stores, quick shops and such, a representative from the Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association, a representative from the National Federation of Independent Businesses, and then a representative from the Wine Institute, who was worried about restriction or fees being placed on glass bottles. And so those were the proponents for the legislation. Opponents include Zach Pistoria from the Sierra Club, three citizens, including Nancy, who was there speaking on behalf of yourself. I don't think you were representing the university.
No,
you were just there on your behalf of yourself. There were also two other citizens that talked about short-sightedness and greed, and the other person who had run like a bed and breakfast at one time but doesn't own it anymore, but wanted to make sure that we keep our state beautiful. Plastic pollution's a problem, and they want tourists to know how beautiful Kansas is. There was also opponents from Kansas Association of Counties that spoke, the Lawrence Ecological Teams United, which is kind of a organization of some churches here in town, and then a rabbi with the Interfaith Action Group. And then there were a number of letters that had been submitted or written opposition submitted to the bill. Michael, I think, had a letter that was submitted. They mentioned your name, and the city of Lawrence was in there. And I would ask Kathy to briefly share with us the letter that's part of the agenda packet for today. Could you just comment on that briefly?
Yeah, I did just attach the full letter on here, similar from last year, that for those of you that were on the SAB. So similar content. We did add our strategic plan and our environmental sustainability commitment into the letter. So it's available to the public. If you have any questions, let me know.
Yep. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, you had a question?
Actually, I listened to it. I wasn't in attendance, but I listened to it. I thought it was extremely interesting. The home rule discussion by the association, the Kansas Association of Counties, because their issue was, of course, home rule, but it also said that the state of Kansas places the requirement for recycling on the counties, and this was taking a tool away from the counties. I felt like that was an extremely powerful message because the state has not done anything that would assist the counties in anytime big time recycling, except that they provided some grants, I believe. But I thought that was an extremely powerful statement by the county.
Yeah, I think it's powerful. I'm hearing that the thought is that this bill has legs and will probably get moved out of the Senate committee favorably to go to a vote in the Senate, and then
just similar to last year. Yeah.
Similar to last year. We'll see. We'll see if it moves forward. But that's out there, and I'm watching it not as closely as the next bill I wanted to talk about briefly is House Bill 2227. I I just wanted to let everybody know that there's a bill out there that would allow third-party power purchase agreements for renewable energy. And why is that important? Kansas is one of not a lot of states left in the country that is a regulated utility state. In order to buy electricity, retail electricity, you have to purchase it from a regulated utility. So here we have to purchase from Evergy. You can't buy electricity retail from another entity. So if you wanted to contract with Cromwell Solar to build, own, and operate solar panels on top of your business and just sell you the electrons, sell you the electricity, you can't do that in Kansas. This bill would allow that. There have been similar bills proposed in the past that bracketed it to just military installations, my interest professionally, military installations, schools, universities, and churches. Those bills all failed. They flipped that on the head this year, and they opened it up to everybody, any business in the state of Kansas. The important aspect of that is the chamber is supporting the bill now.
Right.
The state chamber submitted written testimony in favor of the legislation. That's powerful. Just like the chamber has power on the bag ordinance bill, they have power on this one too. And so it's possible that this bill will actually get legs and move forward, which I think Amanda would be real happy about. I know Good Energy was there testifying in favor of it, but it would really open up the marketplace for people who just want green energy and don't want to have to buy it through Evergy at an inflated price. If you think you can hire an organization like Cromwell or Good Energy or somebody else to build, own, and operate the solar panels on your property or the wind turbine on your property, if you're a manufacturer or something, you can do that under this legislation and just buy the electricity directly from them. Amanda, did you want to comment or?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I provided a written statement of support for this as well. I think that this opens up a lot of opportunity for schools as well, entities that don't necessarily have that upfront cash to go to renewable energy. And I would encourage people to pay attention to it and to write into it for it as well. And then maybe Kate could also say more on, I wasn't available to go to the Capitol today and be present, but there's an additional bill, 2228, that was for net metering. And the goal of that one, there was a few things that it addressed, but the net metering is the ability to interconnect a solar system to the utility and get a buyback rate for whatever you put back onto the grid at a retail rate instead of a small percentage of off sale of the wholesale. A lot of our utility companies are nearing their net metering cap. And we're trying to increase that cap. And that, I think, is going to be important for as we are trying to engage our community and make them educated and want to make these decisions for themselves as a part of our city's goal to become 100% renewable, that net metering is going to play an important part of that as well. It's what makes it pay itself back.
Right.
So.
Yeah, 2228 had a hearing yesterday as well. That was the first item on the agenda, and that would the state has self-imposed a cap on how much net metering can be done. I'm generalizing, and the 2228 would expand that, broaden it.
And I'd like to say I wasn't able to watch the hearing, but I would recommend all SAB members to go on the legislative site. The testimony was great on 2227. Lots of information that if you wanted to write a letter, there's plenty of information that would help you also encourage. If it gets out of committee, there's still going to be a lot of people that need to provide testimony for that, and 2228 also. But if you're interested in educating yourself, there's incredibly good written testimony that you can download from the website.
Right. Lots of good information there.
So sorry, just to be clear, these two bills help individual businesses and individuals. It liberates them to make shifts on their own that they currently can't make. It kind of facilitates those processes.
Well, 2228, you can currently do net metering. It would, but what's happening is the state imposed a kind of a cap on how much net
And
metering.
a date, an expiration date.
And we're nearing that cap.
Okay.
And so this would expand it up and
there's a 2030
expiration date.
Thank you.
Yeah. It also
2227.
includes the ability to have your system appropriately sized. Right now, they have size limits for residential and for commercial to stay within that net metering, but they additionally have a formula that will allow you to offset so much percentage of your utility consumption. And so they're trying to eliminate that set size and use a formula for everybody. So that way more people can actually get the most out of their solar or offset as much as they can versus if they, need more than 15 kilowatts, they could have that. And right now that's the limit for a residential home.
So you have a few people here, Kay and Amanda and myself and Nancy, who are following these bills. So feel free to reach out if you have further questions, but we'll see how they go, and maybe we'll have a little more update next month. Next item on the agenda is we wanted to refer to Transportation Bill or Transportation 2050, the plan that the city is working on. It's available. There's a link to it that's provided in the agenda. If you want to review it and comment on it, comments are due February 22nd. Kathy, did you want to add anything else about that?
No, you got it.
I just wanted to encourage people, if you're interested in it, please take a look at it. And if you have comments, follow up on that. Next item on the agenda is Earth Day is approaching April 22nd, and there are a number of items that the city will be engaged in. I would like to see at least one member from the SAB involved in Earth Day, maybe more. Kathy, could you kind of tell us some of the activities that are going to be going on? And then I would like us, we've only got about 10 minutes left for topics, but I'd like us to talk about how we might be able to participate.
Sure. So I will be brief with this item for Earth Day. Similar to last year, part of our strategic plan and the outcome of unmistakable identity is to collaborate, not just the city, but all the organizations and other entities here in town. And so for Earth Day, that's the approach. The city will be participating, sponsoring, or partnering with organizations. One example is Friends of the Caw has a river cleanup. This is an annual event that the city has been a partner with Friends of the Caw and other groups. And so we are going to do that. That is going to be on Saturday, April the 22nd. And one thing that has started to form is this, usually the river cleanup is in the morning. There are some organizations that are coming together to have a celebration in South Park in the afternoon of Saturday, April the 22nd. So that would be similar to the traditional having tables and information and activity and opportunity for educating the community. And so that's forming for that afternoon. It'll be kind of a shorter time frame, but allowing for all the activities so that everybody can participate throughout the day. I did hear that there's also potential for in that afternoon, if it is raining or some other weather situation that the groups can move indoors. So there's some plans currently underway on what is that backup plan so that we can still have those activities. Last year, as you know, we had the river cleanup on that Saturday and the sustainability science fair that was again put together by some individuals here in Lawrence, and the city was partnering with, and that got canceled due to the weather, but then postponed for that fall. But we're really hoping to have a lot of activities on that Saturday. In addition, we really are hoping the city in putting a lot of communication of celebrating Earth Month. So kind of giving tips throughout the month of things that the community can be engaging with. For those, for example, for folks that have not yet taken a ride on the transit, this is a great year to do so. The fare has been waived, so it's free to ride the T. So that's example of what we're going to be putting out there in communication. Certainly a lot of room for the Sustainability Advisory Board to be involved as you want to be. And participating in these activities. So I would open it up to you all on, what that might look like. In addition, I know we added the proclamation piece here for this agenda item. Last year, there was some discussion about the possibility of this year putting together an Earth Day proclamation, or it might be like an Earth Month proclamation. As staff, we're happy to kind of get that going and draft something like that if that's of interest. And that would be an opportunity for us not to only provide a proclamation, but invite the commissioners and the public to attend all the activities that will be going on that month.
I think that'd be great to have a proclamation. I don't know how others feel, but I think it would be good to have a proclamation that the SAB submits to the city commission. And I think it would be real helpful if we could get a list of those activities, if you could share that with us. And I plan to participate in the river cleanup myself, but it'd be nice to see other SAB folks out and about and making your presence known, letting people know that you're part of the SAB and being a champion for us. Nancy?
So on the Saturday afternoon, are you going to have tabling and different organizations within Lawrence be able to participate as they had in the past?
Yeah. So again, these are organizations that have come together. I believe there's 10 of them already that have signed up for that afternoon at South Park. The lead on that is the Watkins History Museum. So they have applied for the park reservation, and we have waived the fees because we are partnering with them. But they've already gathered interest of 10 organizations that will be tabling at South Park.
Is that the limit?
That is not the limit. This is what they have so far. So they're working.
The word hasn't gone out about that.
As I mentioned, a lot of these activities right now are still in planning phases. So there's not a lot of information out there on the river cleanup or the afternoon on Saturday, the 22nd. We're actually partnering with the Lawrence Public Library as well. While they put a blurb that there's going to be something going on, there's no exact details because we're still meeting and discussing all that. But any organization that is interested that I've talked to, I've forwarded to the Watkins History Museum, who's kind of putting together and organizing that event. They are one of our participants in the strategic plan under unmistakable identity.
So organizations should contact you to become part of this, or Watkins. Who would they contact?
Yeah, at this time they can contact me.
Okay.
There's not a web page yet developed, but I can certainly get them to the right place. Once we have more of that, in stone of how it's gonna, all the details of the park and what's going to be provided and what you need to bring. That's going to be available to the organizations and also to the public, inviting them to come down. Again, it's all kind of early on, but all the plans are underway.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to get the word out. The organizations, at least to start with. Okay.
Other comments about Earth Day? Any other suggestions? I look forward to seeing the list of potential activities. I think that'd be great. And so are you committed to having a draft proclamation for us by the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Then we'll make sure that's part of our agenda too.
Yep.
Thanks, Kathy.
I would suggest there's earthday.org, and you can also put that on their website. And they've got lots of different activities listed that anybody could pick up and also do. But then you can at least register so that people can find it.
And the city will be encouraging all these organizations that are leading those efforts to put their information out, not only locally, but in those sources like the website. The city's website will also have all the listed. And so that page is still under development as we get the details.
All right. We only have a couple of more minutes left in the meeting. On the agenda here is city facility tours. I'm going to work with Kathy to try to set up a tour for us at some of these city facilities. I listed some of them. If anybody has a suggestion on what they'd really like to go see first, and have us focus on first, let me or Kathy know, and we will work on that one. Otherwise, I'm just going to pick, and we'll try to set up a tour or multiple tours so that we, if we have too many people attending, it might have to be an open meeting, and it would be difficult to make the tours open to all of the public. So we might have to keep them size limited. But we'd like to have some tours. I think it's important for us to understand some of the facilities. I've dropped stuff off at the hazardous waste facility, but I'd like a tour of it. I send my trash to the city landfill, but I've not done a tour of it. I can't believe I haven't done that tour, but I'd like to.
Bucket
things
list,
like that.
Bucket list things,
Yeah.
right?
They are. I mean, I want to see them. I'm part of the community here. And then we have other future agenda items that we will consider. One of them is inviting city commissioners to a meeting. We're going to try to, I'd like to achieve that this year, at least get some of the city commissioners to attend our meeting. And we'll probably start out by asking the mayor. Obviously, her time will be a little more limited, but we'll work at that and move from there and invite a city commissioner to sit in on our meeting for 15 minutes or something and talk to us. So
great.
Something else we're going to work on. And then I just listed our coordinating with other boards. I think at some point it'd be good for us to talk about what other boards we should be coordinating with on a more regular basis. Any other comments or questions? Michael, anybody from the public in the last couple of minutes that we have? I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand online. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Ben moves,
Second.
seconded by Nancy. Thank you all for being here tonight. I look forward to seeing you all next month. I think I'll actually be here in person again. I was worried I was going to have to do this meeting from DC. I didn't have to, so that's all good. You all have a good month.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Bye, Maddie.
Bye.
Bye, Amanda. Thank you.